We are back for another episode of Joe's Knows the NFL Draft. It is episode 3. We're going over our NFL Draft quarterback rankings. It would be a top 5, kind of. We couldn't agree on that 5th spot, so we're going to have a little A and B competition. We're going to go through why we think each guy deserves to be named on this list. Real quick, just so you can get to know the analyst and your host, I'm Ben Chadwick, joined by Matt Freeman, Jack Kemler, and Will Kwiatkowski. And guys, we talked about the draft earlier. We had an episode just talking about the Bears, what they should do. We mentioned quarterback a little bit. We don't think they'll go there, but man, quarterbacks, it's pretty deep. Some may argue, hey, you look at Trevor Lawrence, you look at Andrew Luck, there's no one really of that caliber, but there are a lot of guys who could end up being franchise guys, and that's all we're going to talk about here today in this episode. Let's kick it off with our 5A quarterback, one half of the 5 for the quarterback seating. Hendon Hooker, the quarterback out of Tennessee. Freeman, I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah, first off, I mean, we didn't really get to see his full body work for this year because of that ACL injury. But I think the ability to really show off the arm downfield, especially in bigger games against Alabama under the lights, I mean, his ability to play his best in those moments is incredibly impressive. And the fact that he can display that, you know, it points to him having a potentially successful NFL career. So that's why I would slide him in at number 5.
Jack?
Yeah, I really liked what Hooker did last season. I mean, he took care of the ball the best in this whole class. The turnover-worthy play was only at a 1.1% of the time, at second in the Power 5, according to PFF. So that's amazing to me. He only gave up 2 interceptions and was basically a full season. And he really improved every year he played. Like, he started since 2020, and then since then, he's improved every single year he's played. His deep ball, he throws really well. It's kind of scary, him coming off the ACL.
Yeah, I mean, Jack, you mentioned, I have to ask you guys, I mean, how does the ACL injury impact his draft stock and where you think he should go in this draft?
Look, I mean, it's bad. It's a torn ACL. It's probably the worst thing you can have as a QB, but look, we've seen Lamar Jackson come up with a torn ACL and become what he is. So I'm not saying it's impossible. I think there's a good chance that he can get this thing fully healthy, get into the right system, and become a solid QB in the NFL.
Yeah, and I agree with you with that Lamar Jackson comparison. I mean, we saw during Lamar Jackson's draft, he was, you know, former Heisman winner, and he got very slept on. He was drafted at the butt end of the first round. And I think this is kind of something we could be seeing with Hendon Hooker as well. He's got the stereotypical QB body. He runs extraordinarily well. He showed great flashes pushing the ball downfield this year. Really, his biggest question mark is this ACL injury, but he could legitimately be a top 3, top 4 quarterback in this class if that ACL injury never happens. So I think someone could be getting a huge steal at my number 5 quarterback in this draft.
And I mean, one more thing, I want to keep it on Hooker. Let's say that injury never happened whatsoever. Let's say Tennessee maybe even goes to the playoff. Where is Hendon sliding in your boards, and Will, you as well? Like, where would you put him without that ACL injury, which is your main weakness right now that you're bringing up?
I see. For me, it's a little bit difficult because I think it would be a whole different picture if he didn't have that ACL injury, because we're looking at Tennessee potentially getting into the playoff. We're looking at Tennessee, you know, we're looking at Hendon Hooker having more opportunity to perform extraordinarily well in bigger games, you know, on the bright lights. So that's a hugely different picture. But I would say if he doesn't get hurt, for me, he would slide in at number 4 right now, ahead of Will Levis and Tanner McKee. But right now, I think with the ACL, it's definitely it's notable. It needs to have some concern. So number 5 for me is good.
All right, we'll head over. Oh, go ahead, Jack.
I was just going to agree. I do believe it's he put him at 4. He's not better than talent-wise than Richardson, Young, or Stroud, but you could see he's more of a polished QB than Levis.
Well,
yeah, 100%. Can't agree more. I mean, they said it. I do believe he's better than Levis. I do believe he could have a great, NFL career. Might take a little bit longer to get going with the injury, but I would put him at 4.
Yeah, honestly, just because of how high his floor is, we talked about how great he's been production-wise, how he's gotten better every year. I think he can maybe make an argument for that top 3 spot. I'm not saying I would put him in my top 3 quarterbacks, but he's got an argument. I know Richardson is kind of all ceiling, and Hooker is not all floor, but has a very high floor. So that could be an interesting debate. But once again, like we said, the ACL happened. It's something that you got to take into account. So that's why we're sliding him in, or a couple of us are sliding him in at 5, while me and Will are sliding another guy in at 5. So, Will, you want to say who we got at number 5 here?
Yeah, I'll kick it off. We got Tanner McKee. I mean, this guy, out of Stanford, not he didn't have a very productive season, but to me, what I see, you really got to look in the film. This guy's got a lot of hope, at least in my heart, that he could produce in the NFL. So he's a 6'6" guy. He's tall. He's got the QB build that a lot of those GMs are looking for. A few flaws I see in him. Really, really poor pocket presence. He's a guy who likes to get the ball out quick. He likes to run a lot of short routes. He's not going to attack deep. But when he does hold on that ball, he's getting sacked a lot. He got sacked 40 times. His pressure to sack rate was 27%. It's really not good. He's not an elusive quarterback really at all. He could run if he needs. But a few bright sides, he does run the RPO and the play action very, very, very well. For a team that likes the short game and, maybe has a very good run game to combine it with, like a team like the Browns, like an amazing O-line, a great running back, run some shorter plays. He's very good for that. I mean, he gets the ball out quick, but that's where that's where it leads into my next flaw. 8 picks on the year, only 13 touchdowns also. So that's a really non-productive ratio, but the 8 picks are on 8 turnover-worthy plays. If he fixes that decision-making, I really do think this guy could turn out to be something special. Just a few holes, he's got the build. He's got the talent for sure. He's a bit of a step away from being a real good starter, but I think he could definitely make the step up.
Freeman?
Yeah, and I think Tanner McKee, he's a very interesting prospect. You mentioned his size. It's the dream quarterback size for any NFL GM. But, we see a lot of quarterbacks, such as Stroud, such as Bryce Young, teams with very good weapons, very good offensive lines. And we say, well, how are they going to adapt when they don't have the best players on the field week in, week out? I think Tanner McKee, we're looking at the opposite. Stanford went 3-9 in the last 2 years with him being the starter. It's a big question mark to see how he will play. He's constantly going out there, having the disadvantage out on the edge and in the trenches. Stanford's just a poor team. So it's going to be interesting to see how he will adapt to, having a bit of an advantage in the NFL. So it's a huge question mark. I'm not really sure how I should read him. I said before I would rather Hendon Hooker, but Tanner McKee is definitely a guy to keep an eye on.
Yeah, Freeman, I think you hit it on the nose there. I was about to mention that Stanford offense was horrendous. It did him no favors. They didn't offer any help. I mean, it was one of the worst situations to be in the Power 5 at the quarterback position. And he still played decently well. I mean, the accuracy is just not unmatched, but it is top of the top in terms of Power 5. I mean, that ball is thrown on a rope nearly every throw. He's hitting NFL type windows. There's NFL reads that he's making. It's just super impressive. But the only thing that I wish he would do better is just evading pressure. Will brought up how lackluster of an athlete he is. That caused him to have the 6th highest pressure to sack ratio among Power 5 quarterbacks. 27% of the time he was pressured, he was sacked, which is not what you want. That is not acceptable in the NFL. You're going to have 20, 30 sacks on the year at least, that type of percentage. So hoping that Tanner McKee can work on stuff like that. But like I said, the accuracy is just undebatable. It's just so good, and it's going to translate. He's so NFL ready that I think a guy like that is so safe for teams to take, and that's why I slotted him at 5.
Yeah, the accuracy is really good, but I also love his footwork. It's one of the best in this whole draft. You see a guy like Richardson who you watch his footwork, and he's never really ready to make that pass. And McKee, he's always ready to make the pass. He's always doing it well, in the lower body area. Just one thing I really don't like about him when I watch him is his decision making. Just sometimes he does not make the right decision at all. He goes through his reads, and it honestly makes me like, what is he doing? Why is he making that decision right there? You have that guy open. But you are right. He did not have a supporting cast at all. So we could see him, in a good system, maybe flourish.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I'm wearing the wrong hat right now, the Red Sox hat. Sort of a Stanford fan. Used to be, kind of stopped watching because they're so bad. But really, I mean, you guys said it. Really, really bad offense, and it's worse than you think. Their coaching was poor, just poor. And I really think they made Tanner McKee look bad. I mean, this guy was almost a lot of the time making one throw reads, but not off of because he's a bad decision-making quarterback, not because he's, he's not a smart quarterback. I really feel a lot of it was just like RPO. Like you run a slant, this is the only guy you could hit if the running lanes are not there. So I feel like a lot of those picks, as I said, 8 picks on 8 turnover worthy plays. I feel like almost all of those picks were kind of drew up in a way. Like I feel like his talent has not even gotten there. So I feel like when he does step up on the NFL level, he probably will be a backup for a relatively good team. As I see him going in like the later first, maybe early second round. But I mean, when he gets ready, when he gets his time to play, I think this guy really, really could show out.
And I think Freeman hit it on the dot before. He said that most quarterbacks find it very easy in college when they go to the NFL, and they're kind of starstruck. Man, look at all these great defenses. There's a guy later on, which I'm going to use that as a negative for him. I'm sure Freeman knows who I'm talking about. But yeah, a guy like Tanner McKee, like you said, just schematically, like the offense they were running at Stanford just did him no favors whatsoever. It's like they thought they had a completely different quarterback. It's like they thought they had Lamar Jackson out there. Like they just didn't know who they had at the helm of the center, and it just didn't work out for him at all. Obviously, the lineup as well, not the greatest at Stanford. So I mean, at the NFL level, who knows what he could look like? He might look like a way better quarterback, and maybe he's even better than being in this top 5, top 6 range, which we have him in.
Yeah, and I have a question for you guys. You know, you look at Daniel Jones a handful of years ago. He's listed at 6'5", 220. McKee is 6'6", 230. And both of them were kind of under the radar guys coming from smaller schools, you know, Duke and Stanford. Do you see a possibility for McKee to rise up on draft boards, you know, when it gets closer to draft night due to his size and kind of questionable college performance? But it's like it's a low risk, high reward type thing, because you don't really know what this guy can do. You just know he has that stereotypical quarterback build. What do you guys think about him rising on draft boards, similar to how Daniel Jones did?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think he will. I actually think he probably might go like top 15. You know, there are a lot of teams that need quarterbacks and a lot of teams that want to go young. I mean, the Raiders, they just, lost out on Carr. They're going to have to get a new quarterback. And early on in the year, I mean, if you don't recall, like not too much earlier, but about a month ago, this guy was sitting around the top 20 range. He did sort of fall off, but I really do think that's kind of because the Will Levis, the Anthony Richardson, all that hype just kind of, pushed him to the side. Every saying, oh, the top 4, Levis, Anderson, Bryce Young, and CJ Stroud. Everybody's so focused on them that they completely forgot about McKee. I do think he will make the rise. I do think he'll make a jump. And shout out Freeman. I mean, what a comparison. These guys are very alike. But just imagine Tanner McKee in an offense like a Brian Dable offense. I really do think this guy could really, really blossom.
Yeah, and when you're picking between 5A, 5B, McKee, and Hooker, when a team's looking at them, you see McKee's 22, Hooker's 25, so that's a big difference right there, especially with the ACL of Hooker. I think you're going to lead towards McKee.
Exactly. I mean, that's a great point too. I think teams should look at that more, and so should these fans like us making their big boards. I feel like they don't take that into account enough. Age is a huge factor in the NFL, and that's why, again, another point why I think McKee is a top 5 quarterback in this draft. Now, guys, we're getting into the range where we're in these top 4 quarterbacks. They're kind of the same on everyone's board, but they're in different orders. I've seen this guy at 4 be ranked at number 1 on some big boards. I've seen the guy we have at 1 be ranked at number 4. They're all over the place everywhere. So this is going to be our iteration of our top 4. This is our consensus. We don't all agree with this, but more or less, this is what we have as a group. So we'll start it off. Freeman, I'll throw it to you first. Will Levis, the quarterback out of Kentucky.
See, Will Levis, I have a love-hate relationship with him. I think he definitely has all of the stereotypical things a quarterback needs to be in the NFL. He's a bigger guy. He's got a quick release. That's all great. That, GMs, they love to see that. But he's just throws the ball to the wrong team. I mean, he's a nightmare to tackle in the open field. That's great. Quick release, that's great. But there's no display of any sort of touchdown field. He played atrocious against very subpar defenses. He did not show up against Vanderbilt. I don't know how you can have that performance on your resume and still be considered a top 5 pick, and yet he's still being considered as a top 5 pick. That's beyond me. I think there is something to be said for his quick release, his size, his confidence, and that's why I would have him at number 4. I agree with this, but I think the hype, if you have him any higher than number 4, I just don't understand what you're talking about.
Jack?
Yeah, I gotta fully agree. I'm gonna back him up a little bit. His arm talent is crazy. He can make any pass, but to go off that, he can't make the pass consistently. He's very consistent with ball placement. But I will also give him that he's had 3 offensive coordinators in 3 seasons. So they've changed it every year. He hasn't, it's kind of like Baker Mayfield in the NFL. Like they keep changing head coaches. And his 2021 was very promising. I know that 2022 was one of the worst things we've seen from all these QBs, but his 2021 was a very, very good year. It was up there with Young or Stroud. So if he can get back to that form, I could see him going, very high in the draft.
Well,
yeah, there's something about Will Levis that just really rubs me wrong. I think the only way you could move this guy in the draft is just backwards. I don't like this guy at all. I would not draft him if I was an NFL GM. And it's a little, it's a little obscure because, this guy's got an amazing arm talent, but does he really? I personally just think that he just shows it off more. I don't think this guy's arm is that much special than the rest of these guys. I don't think he's doing things that are, unheard of. I don't think he can make every throw on the field. I don't really think he's all that like people are talking about. I think after 2021, there's a little too much hype around him. And, he came out, made some big throws, and, people are out of this world. I mean, a few stats to look at. His average depth of targets, 8.6 yards. I mean, that's around like it's not like special. I'm hearing things about this guy making, crazy throws. Like I'm thinking this guy is like the next PJ Walker making 70-yard Hail Marys. And I'm seeing at the I know it's a combine, but I'm seeing the same throws being made from every single quarterback. I mean, on film, I mean, this guy's he's not showing out too much. His adjusted accuracy. It's all average. I'm not impressed with him. 13 picks last year. I apologize. 10 this year. 13 turnover-worthy plays. I would honestly take McKee over this guy. I know it's absurd. I know he's got a quick release, but I don't like this guy as an NFL prospect at all. I don't see anything besides the fact that he throws the deep ball more often than quarterbacks. I don't want to say he has a good deep ball. I want to say he just throws it a lot more and has a lot more confidence in it.
Yeah, so Will, I like what you were saying. To piggyback off of what you're saying about the combine and he's showing off his arm, I think you're right? Will Levis gets praised to have this great arm talent, which I believe he does. But you look at other quarterbacks in this class that we'll touch on later, like Anthony Richardson, like C.J. Stroud, they're launching the ball just as far and just as accurate, if not more accurate, than Will Levis is in these combine drills. So that arm talent is there, yes, for sure. But those two guys that we have ahead of him, I think they just do it as good or better than him, and then also have everything else around that complements them as a quarterback. So, yeah, Will Levis. Also, not to mention, he's on the back half of his 23rd year on this earth. So he's approaching, he's getting up there in age as well, similar to Hendon Hooker. So there's just a lot of red flags for me.
Yeah, I'll get into a little bit about Will Levis. We mentioned it before. He had an incredible 2021 season. I mean, he was just lights out. He had a top 5 rushing grade, top 15 passing grade, according to PFF. And he was top 10 overall among Power 5 quarterbacks. He was incredible off the play action. I'm sure running back Chris Rodriguez helped a little bit because he was forcing the defense to key in on him. He had 1,400 rushing yards, 6 yards per carry. That's usually what happens. But we brought it up. He was just bad last year. And last year was more valuable than 2021. Yes, Kentucky sucked, but he got miles worse in almost every stat, every grade, every facet of football. He just got worse in. He became very inaccurate, and Rodriguez's usage, that running back I just mentioned, he went down a little bit, and the play action just crumbled for Will Levis. Like he was, I'm not going to call him reliant on the Kentucky offense. It's not like the Kentucky offense was an incredible situation in 2021. He still has the tools to succeed in the NFL, but last year was very, very scary for Will Levis.
Yeah, and one more thing, you have all heard it. I bet you guys have probably said it too. The Josh Allen comparison needs to stop. This guy is not a special, talented runner. He had a very, very good, very good running season. in 2021, but I mean, his highest rushing tally this year was against Georgia. He had 2 rushes for 30 yards, and that's because he had a 21-yard run. That's it. I mean, this guy had 119 rushing yards. That's just, it's really poor. I'm not a big fan of Will Levis, and I really kind of hope the hype dies down. I mean, everybody coming into the combine is like, I can't wait to see this guy throw the ball. And I was waiting for him to throw the ball like almost like over the stadium, and I get it. He's got a quick release, but I mean, this guy just is not that talented. I'm not a big fan of him. I would definitely go for a couple other guys over him. I believe the 5A and 5B are better, but I mean, this guy could have a good, NFL career. He could completely prove me wrong, but I do not like this guy.
Yeah, and really quick before we move on, I understand it was 2 to 3 years ago, but I want to throw out there that Sean Clifford beat this guy out for the starting quarterback job at Penn State. Does that not raise flags? Sean Clifford, mediocre college quarterback when it comes to like Penn State standards, he beat Will Levis out for a starting job. So to me, that throws a little bit of red flags. I'm not blowing it out of proportion, but I think it definitely has to be noted that a Penn State, a high-level college football program, was evaluating both Sean Clifford, mediocre quarterback, and Will Levis, and decided that Sean Clifford would give their team a better chance to win. That has to say something about Will Levis and about how we can project him for the future.
Yeah, I mean, as a notable Penn State fan, in all fairness, he was a lot younger than Sean Clifford. I believe he was a sophomore. Clifford was a redshirt junior, but still, I mean, like you said, Clifford, we're not talking about him in this top 5 quarterbacks in the draft video. So yeah, it's something to bring up. I mean, just for him to get beat by a guy like Clifford, who was just average in the Big Ten, honestly, throughout all of his years there, it's something to worry about. Again, he grew, he got better in 2021, and then plummeted in last year's season. So we'll see how it works out for Levis. The tools are there. We'll see if he can make it work. We'll get into another guy, talk about tools, talk about a combine monster, Anthony Richardson, the quarterback out of Florida. Matt.
Yeah, so just to kick it off, this is a once-in-a-generation type quarterback specimen. I mean, he's a freak athlete. He's got arm talent that tops pretty much any draft class in recent history. I mean, he how obviously is Will Levis rivaling him, but those two, in terms of just sheer arm talent, arm strength, it's unbelievable. He breaks tackles with ease in the open field. Every flaw that he has, I could say, is coachable. So that's what makes this guy so exciting as an NFL draft prospect, because everything that's not teachable, he has. He has every single tool. The only issue is everything that's up here, all the decision-making, the throwing accuracy, is just atrocious. So it's really hard to evaluate this guy. I think if he goes to the right situation, we could be looking at an NFL Hall of Famer. We could be looking at a top 5 quarterback in the league in 3 to 4 years. If he goes to the wrong situation, we could be looking at the next XFL superstar. So I think it's all dependent on the situation, but I would say I'm pretty high on Anthony Richardson.
All right, so ceiling is superstar and floor is superstar, just in a whole other football league. So not terrible for Anthony Richardson. Jack?
I mean, when I watch Anthony Richardson, when he runs, I just think like, how is he going to get injured? That's what I think when I see Josh Allen run. Josh Allen, he's so tall and so big that he's never going to get injured when he gets tackled by these people. And so that's the same as Richardson. He never is in like big danger when he's, running the ball. But also, I mean, Friedman talked about it, his arm talent, but there's a reason he didn't use the word arm skill. I mean, his arm skill, his decision-making is horrible. When he's pressured in the pocket, he folds. His footwork is very sloppy. He does not know how to take off some of the ball. I've been talking about it, that he literally said himself, he said, I don't care how hard I throw it. My receiver has to catch it. Like, that makes no sense. If the guy's running a short route and you still throw it 90 miles per hour, what are we doing? Like, that just makes no sense to me. And he is very lazy looking through his reads. So when you look at up here and on the arm, it's very talented, but skill-wise, it's very, very bad.
Well,
yeah, we got to stop letting Friedman go first, dude. He just takes all the content and just does it for himself. I mean, this guy's just got it all right there. It's kind of annoying. But, Anthony Richardson, I feel disrespected at number 3. I'm not even Anthony Richardson. I think this guy is an unreal talent. I mean, you watch him and you see. You talk about guys who can make any throw, and I don't think this guy is, but he fits some balls in pockets that just like is very impressive. This guy is, and people say that his ceiling is prime Cam Newton and MVP Cam. I mean, Super Cam. He was on a different planet, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think that his ceiling's higher than that. I think his ceiling is higher. I mean, Richardson 6'4", 244. He ran a 4'4", 340. 4'4", 340. Cam Newton 6'5", 248. Ran a 4'5", 640. So I mean, sort of around the same height, but Richardson, a better athlete. Cam Newton might have. He didn't really have the arm that he didn't have a special arm coming out of college. He wasn't amazing, but I think Richardson is just overall better athlete. A lot of things this guy does is so impressive. And Jack said that he doesn't make good reads, and I agree he makes good reads, but Jack said horrible. I would have to disagree. He's still a very high level quarterback. I still think some of the throws he makes are extremely high level, and I don't think he gets enough love for some of the throws he makes. I truly think he's better than whatever anybody thinks he is, and every time you think he's the best, he will do every expectation that you have for him. I mean, Friedman said the best. Everything this guy has is not coachable. Everything he doesn't have is very, very easily coachable. I see this guy just coming into the NFL. He's just gonna tear it up. He's a stud. I think he's by far should be drafted first. I don't know why really it's a debate. People really do think it's a debate. Friedman, you're only upset because you got the OSU flag in the background. But I really do think this guy is the best quarterback to draft.
Well, yeah, I got a question for you, Will. Like you're talking about, his ceiling isn't Cam Newton. We got to remember Cam Newton in college was way better than Anthony Richardson. His Auburn days are better than his. So who do you see his ceiling as? Like that 2015 MVP season will go down as one of the greatest. I don't really know how to top that.
I know. The thing is, we're talking about an athlete that you've never seen before, and we're talking about a guy who's playing the quarterback position, who is 6'4", 244. That is a big man running a 4.43. There have been 12 players since 2000, since the combine really became a thing, that have weighed in at over 244 and have ran a sub 4.44. Guys like Von Miller, Michael Parsons. He's a linebacker playing quarterback. He's an unreal athlete. That's why I believe we could see an unreal talent coming out in the NFL. That's why I believe he could be better than Cam Newton.
Well, I mean, you kind of hyped him up so much. I'll talk a little bit about the things I like about him. It's the potential. I mean, my God, that potential. We're talking prime Cam Newton, like Will mentioned. I mean, he can come into the league in 4 or 5 years. We're talking, we got Patrick Mahomes, we got Joe Burrow, we got Josh Allen, we got Anthony Richardson. Like, that's the type of company he can keep in the NFL if he really does hit that ceiling. Just the tools he has are unbelievable. And even in production-wise, he was an incredible runner. He had the second highest rushing grade among all Power 5 quarterbacks according to PFF. So, he's done stuff in college to really show you, hey, I can really do this at the next level. But the only problem is, can he? Because we didn't see much of it in college so far, or not so far, in his 3 years at college. He just wasn't, I'm not going to say he wasn't great at football. He wasn't consistent at all. I mean, he had the 5th worst completion percentage in the entire Division I, in the entire FBS of the NCAA. And some people may talk about, hey, he throws the ball deeper a lot. Some of those throws are going to be different. They're obviously going to worsen that completion percentage. We had the 7th worst adjusted completion percentage in the Power 5. And this is all with 7.7 yards per attempt, which is not a lot. So, that completion percentage is not good. He is not accurate consistently. He has some throws. Like I said, the highlight reel is the best I've ever seen. When you watch film and you take away his 10, 15 worst plays, they might be the worst plays I've ever seen. Take a Pee Wee quarterback, put him at Florida. That's what Anthony Richardson looks like on a lot of plays, not just the 10, 15 worst plays. I'm talking every highlight play you see, almost every other play is atrocious from Anthony Richardson. I mean, yes, Freeman said everything he has is not coachable. Everything he doesn't have is coachable. you're going to need some magicians in your front office and in your coaching staff to turn him into that absolute potential. And if you can, then that is the greatest draft pick of all time. Even if he goes second overall, that's the greatest draft pick of all time because that's his potential. His potential is one of the greats. And I know that's absurd to say for a guy that's number 3 in a not so absurdly incredible quarterback class, but that's really what his potential is. It's just that floor, and he could be such an easy bust. It's so easy to see him not be great in the NFL, and I just don't like taking that big of a risk on a guy like this, especially when you got the other 2 guys we're about to mention. So that's sort of my analysis on Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, and you know, me being an Ohio State fan, I got a lot of guys in my memory: Troy Smith, Braxton Miller. You know, good quarterbacks in college, but they ended up making position changes as they went to the NFL. And you know, we're on the topic of how Anthony Richardson is a freak athlete, 6'4", 244 and a 4.4 340. This is like a quicker 40 than Derrick Henry. He's bigger than Derrick Henry, and Derrick Henry terrorizes the league in the open field. Could you guys see Anthony Richardson potentially moving positions? Does that add to his value as a draft prospect? The idea that he might be able to become a tight end or a wide receiver down the line if the quarterback thing doesn't work?
I'll answer it. Yeah, I mean, I do see it happening. I mean, I've never actually witnessed a position change. I always hear these guys like, yeah, it's going to be a quarterback in college, and but I've never really seen it, so I don't really believe in it. But one thing is, it is so disrespectful the way you guys are talking about this guy. And this guy actually, he is a very good quarterback. Like, yes, he has some terrible plays, and yes, he just kind of loses sense of what he's doing sometimes in the pocket, but he makes some throws that are NFL level. And I'm not talking about some, I'm talking about a good amount. There's been some games where that guy, he just came out and like completely dominated. I mean, we're talking about this guy had no touchdowns for the first 3 games. After that, I mean, he turned up as a quarterback. I get it. He did not have the arm that, you know, Levis, you know, Stroud and Young had, but you can't forget, like, he still is a very good quarterback. And you got to take that away. Like, this guy isn't a bum. Like, he's going to be good in the NFL because of his legs. And it's how much improvement his arm could have. And I mean, if you believe so much in Justin Fields, it's almost impossible not to believe in this guy.
I'm sorry, Will, but I do have to just fully disagree. I mean, his decision-making was so bad last year. He's had such limited experience. He's only played 1 year, so I can't really fully trust him coming out of this draft. And also, he had a 28.2 uncatchable pass rate over the last 2 seasons. That is the 7th highest in Power 5. I mean, that is so bad, especially from a guy you're saying that's not a bad QB. He was a bad QB. His physicals are amazing. He just was a bad QB. And somebody, an offensive coordinator, can turn him into a good one, but I don't see him being not a bad QB.
I'm just going to stand my ground when it comes to it. I truly do believe he's going to be a good QB, and I think there's a lot of guys in the league who can make him a good QB. But I mean, he has like everything you want. It's kind of unrealistic to not take him at 1.
All right, well, we'll see. I mean, like I said, the top 4 is really up for grabs, but now that we get down to the nitty-gritty, now that we're at the top 2, these are essentially, in my opinion at least, the main 2 guys that people are debating about all over the country right now for the draft. It is between CJ Stroud and Bryce Young. And for us, on our consensus big board, at number 2 is quarterback from Ohio State, CJ Stroud. We'll throw it over to the notorious Ohio State fan. He's got the banner hanging up on his right corner, Matt Freeman.
Yeah, so I'm very high on CJ Stroud, not only because I'm a Buckeye fan. He just possesses some talents or some traits that can't be ignored. He very clearly has the best arm talent in this entire draft in terms of putting the ball wherever he wants, pretty much any play throughout the entire game. He's got that arm strength and that prototypical, you know, NFL quarterback frame. He's got very good pocket presence. He displayed that against Georgia, the most NFL comparable defense that he played all year. And if it weren't for Noah Ruggles forgetting how to kick a field goal, he would have won that game. And I think we may be talking about him being the consensus number 1 pick if he gets the ability to win a national championship. So I just think the arm talent, he's got the size, and he showed the pocket presence and the mobility in that last game against Georgia. So I think that pushes him, in my eyes, to be the number one quarterback. But number two, I'm not super mad at.
Jack?
Yeah, I mean, the reason I just have him under Young is just there's stuff in Young's game that I don't see in Stroud's game. I see Stroud is really bad with throwing the run. When he gets pressured, he's really bad. He gets tunnel vision. He only looks through one read and then will just stare at him the whole time, telegraph his passes sometimes, and he can't go through those reads. And also, I mean, he played in the best offense in the whole college football. I mean, he had the best weapons, a really good O-line, so we don't know how that's going to translate into the NFL.
Well,
yeah. I mean, the whole, oh yeah, he's got a great offense. It is going to be, different when he gets drafted by, the Colts, the Texans, the Panthers. They don't have this amazing, offense. But I do want to touch on something. This guy is CJ Stroud. I've heard a lot of people say he doesn't have that high of a ceiling. This may be around the best he's going to perform. He's not going to, pan out to be a top 5 quarterback. And I think it's wrong. And I think it's wrong because I think that, his running game is going to decline. I don't think he's a good runner. And I think he was kind of only a good runner because it's college. Every quarterback's a half decent runner in college. I mean, you got to do it. It's just kind of like a thing. But I think his arm is nowhere near what it could be. I think it's just going to keep on improving. I think this guy's going to be probably one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league in 2 years. He's probably going to have the best arm talent, especially with Brady gone. Guys moving out. I think that he's going to be probably one of the best throwing quarterbacks in the league in 2 years.
Well, I couldn't agree more. That's my main thing with him. My main point to emphasize is he's the most accurate quarterback in the draft. I mean, when he's protected, he is unmatched. I mean, he's almost perfect when he's protected. And also, just not to mention, we talked about that playoff game a little bit. By far, his best game in his entire college career was against Georgia in the college football playoffs. So it's not like we can't worry about him not being clutch, him not being able to handle the bright lights in his face. I mean, he came to play against a Georgia defense that was one for the history book. So that is just unremarkable, and he played incredible all throughout his entire time in college, if I'm being honest. But like Jack said, the offense helps a lot. And when that O-line is playing as good as they are and he is protected all the time, he's going to play incredible. But in the few instances where the O-line wasn't great, the couple games where they might have not been great, he crumbles under pressure. He cannot handle pressure at all. And when he's drafted in the top 5, top 10, those teams have a top 5 and top 10 pick for a reason. It's because they're not a great team, and they most likely don't have a great O-line. That is what I'm worried about with CJ Stroud. He forces passes way too much when he's under pressure. He had a 42 PFF grade 1 under pressure, which is 50th among 75 graded Power 5 quarterbacks. That's not good. That's not number 1 prospect in the country good. That's not a top 5 quarterback in the class good. He still is my number 2 quarterback just because of how good he is when he's protected. But, man, when he faces some heat, he's got to fix something there, because if he doesn't, it could be a really, really rough and rocky start to his NFL career.
Yeah, and I just want to touch on a couple of things you guys said. First of all, the weapons that he has on the outside. I mean, obviously, Igbuka and Marvin Harrison, we're looking at 2 first-round picks next year. Those are his receivers out wide. I understand he had probably the 2 best wide receivers in college football, or that are going into next year, 2 top 5 receivers in college football. But you have to see the degree of difficulty of the throws that he's going to make in big moments against Georgia. He would throw balls perfectly, very high degree of difficulty. And yes, the weapons are fantastic, but the throws are also fantastic as well. And in terms of throwing under pressure, I agree. In the pocket when he's under pressure, it was my biggest concern as a fan, as an Ohio State fan, going into that Michigan game. But what I think he did show is he showed flashes of Bryce Young, to be completely honest with you. Against Georgia, he would escape the pocket, he would extend plays, and he found Marvin Harrison a couple times downfield for big touchdowns against Georgia. So his ability, or him showing that he has the ability to extend plays a little bit, and I understand the weapons were fantastic, but just the sheer arm talent, it can't be ignored. So I would have him number 1, but again, I agree with what you said in terms of under pressure in the pocket. So being him at number 2, I'm not too mad at.
And we'll get to our number one guy to end off the list. He is on some number one list. He is the number one guy on some lists, not on all of them, but he is on ours. Quarterback out of Alabama, Bryce Young. Freeman, I'll throw it to you first.
Yeah, I mean, just to rattle him off, he's got elite decision making. He looks off defenders incredibly well, and his ability to improvise is Patrick Mahomes-esque. If you're looking at the big time games in college against Tennessee, against Texas, and my one issue with him is his height. And if you look, a lot of people are saying that, oh, it's not that big of a deal. You're looking at Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow. The top quarterbacks in this league are all 6 foot plus, and he's sitting there at 5'10". Literally every single elite quarterback in this league is 6 foot plus. He's sitting at 5'10". So for him to be a rookie, especially going in at that small of a height, I mean, that it's going to be difficult for him. And I think that can't be overlooked. You can't just say, oh, he can play football well. There's a reason why most quarterbacks in the NFL, most successful quarterbacks in the NFL are 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", in that range. So that can't be overlooked.
Jack?
Yeah, when I look at Bryce Young and I watch him, I don't see any weaknesses in his game, right? There could be something that you don't like and that he can improve on, but there's not something that you're looking at and like, oh, that's bad. What that is bad. His height is bad. I get that, but like that is it. He has no weaknesses inside of his game. He is an amazing playmaker, amazing improviser. He's so creative with the ball. He has so much zip on the ball for his size, and he is unsurpassed extending the plays. And you look at that Alabama team last year, 22 passes were dropped last season from those receivers. More than half of those were under pressure, according to PFF. So it's not like he was playing with Stroud's team. I believe if he was playing with Stroud, this wouldn't even be a conversation.
Bro, this is the most absurd fact. It has gotten out of hand that the fact that people are talking about Alabama, the number 5 team in the country, as a team that's like dust, like they're horrible. Like Bryce Young just like saved them and like threw them on their back. And I was challenged with watching film because I think this guy's the 3rd best quarterback in the draft. I was challenged to pay attention and watch some film, so I did. And I ended up I watched film for this year and I watched film for last year. And when I was watching film for last year, I felt like I was just watching film on Jameson Williams and John Mechie. I mean, I really believe I could have excelled in that offense. I mean, talk about amazing offense. That 2021 Alabama team was like unheard of good. These guys were just so talented. And I do believe there's flaws in this guy's game. And I do believe that him being 5'10" is a much bigger problem than him being 5'10". Like people are like, oh, he's short. And then just say like, oh, I don't want to draft him. He's short. You look into it. This guy, has he taken a single snap under center in his career? He just makes the offensive playbook. Like he's not a Mahomes guy where you could just do anything. Where he can improvise to a level in a way like Mahomes, nowhere near his level. But he's a very good improvising quarterback. But he makes the playbook so small with his limited ability because of the fact that like every single play, he's taking it from the shotgun and he's taking another 5 steps back. And I really hate to say it, Jack. You talked about McKee having great footwork, and I may be wrong on this. I'm not an NFL analyst. I'm probably not going to get hired by them anytime soon. But Bryce Young's footwork isn't amazing, and I might be getting like crazy looks right now. I don't know. And there we go. Jack's upset. And you're only going to tell me he does have great footwork because of his production. And if you really do look at it, this guy's almost throwing off his back foot. Oh, he's throwing his back foot a lot. His feet are very rarely set. But he still gets zip on the ball. I don't think this guy is as good as people believe. I believe there's been a narrative going around for the draft, and everybody's kind of following it. The CJ Stroud's is super accurate, but has amazing offense. Richardson is only an athlete, and that Bryce Young is the best quarterback. And I feel like that narrative kind of needs to get cut off here, and people need to start seeing through it. I don't think Bryce Young is that special.
I'm going to completely disagree. I think he is. Yep. I think he's an unbelievable playmaker. I mean, he makes something out of nothing on all the plays where it just seems like, oh, that's going to be a throwaway. That's going to be a sack. That's just going to be an incompletion. And he makes something magical happen. I mean, he had the third highest passing grade under pressure in the entire Power Five. Also, he's only sacked on 12% of his pressures for the entire Power Five as well, which ranks in the top 5. So, like, when he's under pressure, he's not under pressure for long. He gets out of it. He escapes. Like you said, C.J. Stroud does that. Bryce Young does it to a whole nother level. We're talking the Russell Wilson type of escapability that he has. That is the type of level I'm talking about here. Also, highest passing grade in general in the country this season, and he was second last year. This guy is the truth. I mean, I couldn't care less about his height. He is. I know the guys are bigger and stronger in the NFL. He's just this good at football at an Alabama team. Yeah, it was great last year. It wasn't that great this year, and he still played to the same exact level. This is the quarterback you're getting if you draft him. Now, I will say, Kemmler brought up, he can't find any weaknesses. There is one weakness, sort of. I mean, it's not a massive one, but it still needs to be brought up. He takes 3 seconds to throw when in the pocket, which isn't the greatest, especially in comparison to other Power 5 quarterbacks. He takes 4.5 seconds to throw on sacks, which is the 5th worst in the Power 5. So he holds the ball way too often, and he was responsible for 32% of the sacks when pressured for Alabama last season because he just held onto the ball way too long. And that is one of my biggest weakness. I couldn't care less about the height. That is my biggest weakness for Bryce Young. It's just that he's got to learn to get the ball out. And I'm not even talking about just him scrambling around. That adds on to the time. This is him in the pocket. So he's got to learn to get it out or start scrambling.
Yeah, and Chadwick, I want to go right off of what you said. I mean, Pat, what Bryce Young is doing, it's video game-esque. What he does, escaping the pocket, keeping plays alive, it's incredible. It reminds me of a guy like Johnny Football a bunch of years ago. So my problem with Bryce Young is any NFL trait he doesn't seem to possess. It's if you're looking at elite arm strength, his is just not there. It's about average. It's good for his height, like Jack said, but you don't get a participation medal because it's good for your height. It's got to be good, period. It's average. He's not great in the pocket. Chadwick, you just said. I feel like his pocket presence, his ability to escape the pocket is great, but his pocket presence is not there. And those are two very huge things when it comes to translating your game from college to the NFL. In college, it's a little bit easier to dance around when you leave the pocket. You're dealing with some big guys now in the NFL. They're all bigger. They're all faster. So I think that aspect of his game is going to have to shrink, and he's going to have to be able to do more in the pocket. And Chadwick, you just said he holds onto the ball too long. We already touched on how short he is. It just doesn't bode well for him being an NFL quarterback. I still think he is an elite prospect, but that's why I would take Stroud over him because I think he has the size. He has the stereotypical quarterback traits.
Yeah, no, one thing that, Young does the best for me, and Will said it, that he doesn't like his footwork, is when he evades the pocket, when he gets the pressure, he actually has the skill that I don't see anybody else doing here. Stroud, Levis, Richardson, nobody else does it. He sets his foot while being ran down about 5 feet and makes the throw. He has that ability that nobody else does, and it is amazing. That's why it adds to his footwork, and it's so good. And also, Will said when he's on his back foot, he's not the greatest. I've seen a lot of plays where he's on his back foot, and he whips the ball, and he gets it there. I could bring it up in the film when we do the player feature episode. So, Will, if you want to just not believe in him, that's fine now. But keep all your questions there, so when I go through the film, you could be change your mind.
Yeah, I don't know. If I did say he was bad off his back foot, I didn't really mean it. I just said he's throwing off his back foot, and that's never really good in anything you do to be on your back foot. And yeah, he does have great footwork, like out of the pocket, but I truly don't think he's in the pocket a good passer. And Chuck, I hate to describe it, but you said it takes him a while to throw the football. Yeah, that takes about 3 seconds to get really far away so he can see his receivers downfield. I don't see him panning out to be much in the NFL. I really do think the height is a massive factor, and out of the pocket, I do think he's the best quarterback in this draft by far. Out of the pocket, I think he's probably the most talented quarterback we've seen in a while. But in the pocket, where quarterbacks spend most of their time, I don't think he's a good quarterback in that realm. And I think he has a lot of work to do. And I really think a lot of that problem is because he's 5'10".
All right, well, you can see how divided we are on nearly every single one of these quarterbacks, especially as we get higher in the list. some bold takes. Jack has his feelings about it. Will has his feelings about it. Obviously, me and Freeman do as well. Be sure to tune in next episode, our running back positional rankings. But for the very first positional rankings episode for Joe's Knows the NFL Draft, the quarterback rankings, I think it went pretty well. A lot of heated debates. We're going to get into them even more in those player features that Jack mentioned. But for Matt Freeman, Jack Kemmler, and Will Kukowski, I'm Ben Schauder. Thanks for watching.